everyone. Welcome to the African Women Intake. This is a panel and it's going to be moderated by me. My name is Bonita Beatrice Nanziri, and I am the founder and team lead of MDEX, a smartphone-based sickle cell diagnostic tool. With me are three powerhouses, amazing African women who are still killing it in tech despite the increased gender challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. This conversation is basically going to spotlight the work of African female leaders in digital health, and we're going to understand deeply the importance of locally driven and female-led tech solutions. We want to find out how these amazing women are creating an enabling space, as well as invite women to participate in technology. Thank you so much, and welcome to the African Women. Nekesa, she's the director. We have Neil Kolise, the founder of the iMed Tech Group, and Santana Mthoni, the country lead of LifeBank Kenya. Santana, tell us a little bit more about LifeBank Kenya.
Good morning, good evening, everyone. As Bonita mentioned, I am Santana Mthoni, and I'm the country lead for LifeBank in Kenya. And we are a medical distribution company that was formed in Nigeria and has now expanded into Kenya. And the solutions that we have really tackle the access to medical supplies, the safety of medical supplies, and also the safety issues that surround all that. So what we do is we work around the clock, 24/7, 365 days a year, to ensure that doctors have everything that they need to save the lives of their patients. So be it blood and blood components, be it medical oxygen, be it medical consumables and PPE. And I think even with COVID, this has been super important. We have been working around the clock to ensure that what doctors need is made available to them in the right condition, on time, and we really ensure that gets done in a very seamless process as compared to most alternative processes.
Thank you so much, Santana. Nelly, please tell us a bit more about what you do.
Okay, hi, my name is Nelly Hodise. I'm the co-founder of iMed Tech Group, which has changed its name to 3D Imo. So we are a software and data science company based in Cape Town, South Africa, and we work mainly in preventative healthcare. So most of the products that we have developed is addressing how we can be able to do early detection of viral infections or diseases that, if they are not addressed earlier, can lead to either loss of lives or also create the pandemics that we see at the moment. So for the past 5 years, we have worked within the cancer space, working with women, being able to early diagnosis of breast cancer and being able to also help them for mastectomy and providing breast prosthetics. And currently we have shifted gear and started looking at the emergence of a lot of viral infections globally, and have started working within early detection of viral infections within animals. It's quite a huge jump, but the understanding that a lot of viral infections come from animals. So we have been working within animals, helping identifying animals, tracing disease risks among animals, particularly in farm animals, which are the ones that are a lot of people within the African continent live with animals in their daily lives quite a lot, and being able to protect animals as a way to protect humans.
Thank you so much. And then Nekesa, tell us more about AfriLabs.
Thanks, Bonita, and thank you to the organizers for having me here. It's an absolute pleasure to be able to spend time with these lovely women on the panel. So my name is Nekesa Were, and I am Director of Strategy at AfriLabs, which is a Pan-African network of hubs. AfriLabs is headquartered in Abuja, Nigeria, and so I work remotely. And we support our hubs, which is 240 hubs spread across 47 African countries, And so we support them in three key ways. The first one is through reliable data. And so we are constantly collecting or curating data that is relevant for primarily our hubs, but also innovators and funders, investors, and governments, and so on. We just recently launched our needs assessment research paper, which is basically talking about what are the needs of the African entrepreneur, what are the needs of the African hub. It's available on our site, afrilabs.com. It also has some information there on what are the needs of investors. So I find it I'm obviously very partial, but I think it's a very interesting read for everyone. The second way that we support our hubs is through funding. And so we have a very interesting program, which is a matching program. And so what's happening is that our hubs are recommending startups to angel investors that are ready for some form of investment. And should we find an angel that wants to invest in a startup, then we have a matching fund, thanks to the French Development Agency, that supports the startups as well. And so they get some funding from the angel investor and some funding from our matching fund as well. And we also have a grant program. And so we've just given some of our hubs grants to help them implement programs that are aimed at ensuring that they have sustainability for the work that they're doing. And then the final way that we support our hubs is through our capacity building program. And what this is contextualized literature or contextualized curriculums that support African entrepreneurs and African hubs to build businesses in Africa. Yep. And so those are the three things that we do at AfriLabs.
Thank you so much. I think I'm going to start with you, Nekesa. Why do you think that female-led and locally driven solutions are so critical for digital health?
Right. So let me give a first example, which is not necessarily within the health space, but bear with me. So a sizable contribution of Africa's economy is made by women. A lot of the food that we grow, in fact, a lot of the food we eat is grown by women, and women actually run 1/3 of businesses in Africa. So I would say the first point is that women actually create solutions, very critical solutions. So for example, in the food space, they grow majority of the food that we eat. But a second example within the health space is that we have, and if you speak specifically around COVID-19, so a lot of the midwives, a lot of the nurses are going to be women, a lot of the care, the people providing care. And so taking care of children, taking care of the elderly, taking care of sick family members within the context of COVID-19 are also going to be women. And so they're right at the center of this pandemic, right? And also are right at the center of the agriculture space. And if there's one thing that we know, at least within the African context, is that the people more likely to build solutions that matter and solutions that are sustainable are going to be the people right at the center of those solutions. And so if we say that women are at the center of agriculture, are at the center of the health space, and now what's very relevant to speak about is the pandemic, then follows that they would be more likely to offer solutions or offer ideas that would help us build very critical digital tools. And so for me, that really is a basic concept, that women are right at the center of whatever issue that it is that we're tackling, and therefore should be the demographic that we think most about including when we're building out these solutions. Over.
Thank you so much. Santana, what are your thoughts on having female-led and locally driven solutions? Why do you think they're important to digital health?
When you think of who comprises, say, the global or the world's health workforce, you find, just as Nekesa mentioned, from the midwives, the nurses, to basically even within hospitals, you're looking at who do the catering. You'll find that this is comprised of women. But then what you find is, as you go higher and look at who makes the leadership decisions on what gets implemented, what gets funded, what gets put at the forefront, then you find that the number of women decreases as you go up. And I think that this is really the challenge, because I would never, like as Santana, I've never lived as a man. So I wouldn't really know very well how to deal with, the male body as it is, because it's not a lived experience for me. So I think the fact that women who are part of that workforce are also really left out when it comes to the making of these major decisions it also really came up, because I think in the beginning of the pandemic, we saw that women who were at the front line were already complaining that the PPE couldn't fit properly, because the sizing was of a default tall man, right? So I think when in the small little things that people don't really pay so much attention to, that you find these problems really, really happening. And I think it's super important, because you need to have data, for you to really be sustainable and for you to have an impact, then you have to include everyone. You have to get, even when it comes to even say the vaccine testing, there's also a problem where not enough women were used for the test trials. And this was in the beginning stages of the testing of the vaccines. So it becomes also really hard, because people are working from assumptions. So I think it's super important that women are at the forefront of making solutions and even bringing about solutions to problems that disproportionately affect them.
Thank you so much. Nelly, how can the field of digital health create a more enabling and inviting environment for women's participation and leadership?
Okay, one of the things I'm going to talk about digital opportunities and how it could create an enabling environment for women's participation in the economy is that we shouldn't shy away from the fact that when you look at sub-Saharan Africa, the biggest participation within businesses is led by women. It's the highest in every region you find in the world in sub-Saharan Africa. So we cannot talk about technology within the healthcare space or in any other sector of the economy without putting women at the center of them leading that technological growth or advancement. Because I always say that nothing without women, we cannot have anything for women without women at the center of it, leading it. And for many years, we've always seen things done for women without women being at the forefront. And one of the things I love about technology and about building new startups is that there is always an empathy map that we build, that it always needs someone who knows the problems, who has experienced the problems, who understands the customer very well, for them to be able to deliver the product to the customers who look like them, who share the same experiences as them. And particularly within healthcare is that we need to start creating a lot of solutions that speak primarily to women. We have always had a lot of solutions within the healthcare space, digital healthcare space, that speak to a broader community without speaking specifically to women. But we need to start seeing more that speak specifically to women, particularly as we talk about a lot of solutions that that tackle the biggest challenges that a lot of women have, such as whenever women have to give birth, what kind of solutions that we need to bring in that are tailored mainly for women. That's why I appreciate a lot of the work that Life Bank Nigeria is doing, because they have customized a solution that speaks a lot more to women and puts women and the women's needs at the center of their product development and being their main customer. And also when we started building a company with iMedTech, one of the biggest things that we wanted to do was that we don't want to talk as cancer as a whole. We want to talk about cancer focused as women, because we understand that if we don't create digital healthcare solutions that speak to women at the center of why we need of technology, we are going to miss out the biggest customer. We're going to miss out the biggest human beings in this whole wide world that we need to support, whose challenges we need to address, and who the biggest solutions that we need to create for us to be a sustainable continent.
Thank you so much. Santana, what are your thoughts on this?
I think from the very beginning, we've seen that there's so many barriers to entry for women, be it education barriers and be it access to opportunities. You find, I think it's interesting. I saw this tweet where, and I just ended up laughing because it said, it was talking of how when many women say when they propose that they want a certain opportunity, they're always told, I will give you mentorship. But you find if it's a male counterpart who probably even have the same qualifications as that woman, he'll be told, oh, let's meet in the bar, right? So I think it's from the small things. It's the implicit gender bias. It's the racial gender bias. It's the gender wage gap that really exacerbates all these problems that even make it hard for women to even rise to a point to leadership positions where they make very critical decisions as regards to who gets funded, what gets funded, when does it get funded. So I think it really starts from the very beginning. And I think even when it comes down to even culturally, you find that in digital health, you find there's also not many, you find that as much as women are part of that workforce or are in digital health, you find that even the roles that they take are not, they're not able to do as much as they would have done. And I think what we also find is even with before COVID, let's even put it in terms of the gender wage gap that already exists. There's a gender wage gap that exists before COVID and it hasn't become worse with the pandemic. There is unpaid care that women have to do. So you can imagine if someone is already doing unpaid domestic work at home and even care for the elderly, then they're even having to do much more of it. So we've seen, if there's been a calculator that I've seen even from the UN where, you just input how much time you spend and it kind of gives you a breakdown of how much time you spend, say as a woman, as a man, when it comes to even this work. So I think when you look at even the work-life integration, there definitely are challenges because you find not everyone is empathetic or even aware of the barriers that women have to ensure that they can bring their full selves to work. Because if back home they're not having supportive family members who are also able to take in this share of even say the care work, then of course you find women really being stretched out and really not being able to do as much as they would if they had better support systems around them at work and at home.
So I am hearing empathy from both of your submissions, and you think I'm just seeking clarity. So you think the field of digital health, if empathy is applied to it, will be able to create a more enabling and inviting environment. Can we say that the fact that digital health can enable a woman to work from home or to work remotely, this gives them more time and helps them, to balance out their life in terms of work and in terms of family? Is that what you, maybe let's hear from Nekesa. Nekesa, what are your thoughts? Do you think the field of digital healthcare, is kind of creating a more enabling and inviting environment for women's participation and leadership?
Yes. So I think broadly, the digital space creates more opportunities for any demographic. Just the fact that one would be able to use tech or innovate around a thing, it opens up lots of doors, lots of opportunities. However, I feel the challenge that we have right now is the skills gap. Or you could even talk about the mobile gender gap, for example. And so from a young age, we're still trying to get young girls, young women to catch up in terms of skills and for STEM being an acceptable space for girls to be in. And then if you fast track and think about this whole generation of women who are not exposed to tech, who perhaps live within households where there's only one mobile phone, then you're talking about the mobile gender gap. So which means that they don't have the skills. And even if they did, they just do not have the equipment with which to interact with technology, right? So yes, once they can get into technology, into the innovation space, then it's in some regards an even playing field in terms of tech is a tool that anyone should be able to pick up and use to their advantage should they so wish. But there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of ensuring that women have the skill and have the opportunity to be able to take advantage of tech to the capacity that they can. And then for me, the second thing is also more opportunities, more resources, more of an enabling environment to just tell their stories. So for sure, there's women even on this panel doing incredible work within the digital health space, and there's many others out there. But we have been conditioned to not be that proud about our stories, or not be able to take advantage of the tools that exist to tell our stories more. So even we as women need to get out of our shells, need to look for those opportunities, need to tell each other stories. So it really warmed my heart when I was hearing about LifeBank from another panelist, not the LifeBank panelist, for example. So we need to tell our stories, other people, other women's stories, and not just women. So men as well need to become champions of women's stories. And so if they can support in amplifying our stories, our voices, then that's also welcome as well. And partnerships can happen there. Yep. So for me, it's the skills and also the storytelling.
Thank you so much, Nekesa. And I'd like to encourage the people attending this session. Please feel free to ask questions. At the end, we are going to have an opportunity for the speakers to answer your questions. And then I would like to know, I think I'm going to start with Nelly. How have the gendered impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic created more challenges for women in tech? And what are the women in tech doing to overcome them?
One of the biggest challenges is funding. So even before COVID, there was a huge funding gap. And during COVID, there was a funding problem. There was a funding crisis where a lot of investors were holding on to their funds, and you understand that in that case, it then becomes a lot more difficult for a lot of women within the tech space to access a lot of funding. But beyond that, it's one of the things that made us understand that during COVID, that there is a huge crisis, especially within the African continent, of our support and our radical support to funding and a lot of female startups within the tech space, because a lot of the businesses that couldn't survive through COVID, where a lot of them were female-led businesses. And it's one of those things you start asking yourself that, have you been doing the right groundwork to supporting women for them to survive during the tough challenges? Even beyond funding, you also need to ask ourselves, are we providing a lot of female mentors to support women within the tech space for them to be able to overcome a lot of challenges that they face within the entrepreneurial space and running businesses? And I don't think we have been doing that. COVID showed us that we haven't done that a lot. And I'm sad to have seen so many female-led companies not being able to make it through the pandemic and closing down.
And what do you think we can do what can we do to overcome that? What can we do to see that funding gap is bridged?
I think it's a combination of more institutions that support the development of women, creating more communities for women. I truly believe, I appreciate the work that Nekesa and her team are doing, because as we start seeing a lot more accelerators that are successful in providing funding to women early enough, and funding that is paired with training and mentorship, it would help in us being able to sort of deal with those challenges, because it's not just about the money, and I often see it quite a lot. It's also about the support that we offer women quite a lot, because female founders are still quite early. We are a lot of the female founders within the tech space are still at early stage right now because they either started their companies 5 or 6 years ago. Some of them are just 2 years ago. And because you don't have a lot of women within the tech space, the world sort of becomes very lonely. And in as much as we provide funding, we need to provide them with community of other women that they can be a part of that provides support. It could be women that either come from a corporate background, women who are investors, or women who are angel investors, or women who have some expertise in leading businesses to support them.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Nelly, for that submission. I think I'm going to direct this to Nekesa. Whatever Nelly has highlighted are some of the challenges I would personally associate with. When I was starting out, it was about the tech. Is the tech working? Is the solution working? And it wasn't until I got engaged in a pitch competition that I was asked about the business model, something I had never paid attention to. So, Nelly, I totally hear you. Nekesa, you're running, your AfriLabs is doing a lot of work with tech startups. How with startups? How many do you have accelerators that are focused on nurturing digital health innovations?
So majority of our hubs and majority of the programs that they run are sector agnostic, right? And so there will be, I would bet in majority of the hubs, there is someone working within that hub that's within the digital health space, but there wouldn't necessarily be a program specifically for the health space. That's majority of our hubs. But we recently inducted 15 new hubs that brought us to 240. And amongst those was Vilgrow. And Vilgrow is 100% focused within the health space. So that was an exciting opportunity for us. And Vilgrow has plans to go Pan-African. They were previously just in Nairobi, Kenya, but have joined AfriLabs specifically to get the kind of infrastructure they need to expand across the continent. So that's definitely one hub or innovation space that we should all be watching. I'm very excited about it. But to your point that you, for example, focused on the tech, and then eventually you're like, oh my goodness, there's this business that has to surround it as well. It definitely is a challenge that we find a lot of innovators face. And it's a great coincidence. Actually, I was having this conversation with the AfriLabs team because we were re-strategizing for 2021. And we're just saying we need to pay more attention to our innovators, to our entrepreneurs, and learn to not use these terms interchangeably, because innovators are not necessarily entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs are not necessarily innovators. So you could have a great innovation, but have got no idea around business. And so spaces like ours and even innovators on their own need to learn to say, right, this is my innovation and I do want to create a business around it. I do want to be an entrepreneur, and then work towards that and allow themselves the time to work towards it. Or they need to be able to say, I am an innovator or I am an inventor, but I do not want to be an entrepreneur. And so then find someone who would be willing to run with that idea or that innovation and create it into a business. Over.
Thank you so much. Santana, how have the gendered impacts of the pandemic created more challenges for women in tech? Because you're running a business, LifeBank is basically, its backbone is tech. So, I mean, what are your thoughts? What are women doing to overcome some of these challenges? Do you think more have been created? And what are some of the things that women can do to overcome the challenges that have come with the pandemic?
So I think just as I've been mentioned earlier on, we saw that, funding in itself, we find that people are able to access funding in the beginning. And then with even women in tech who are even tech entrepreneurs, with say, the pandemic, then you find most of the family is actually is now home. The kids are away from school. So it's also been a lot of, it's not mental gymnastics, but if I put it that way, really trying to manage the company, really trying to manage your home, really trying to manage care for the elderly and ensuring that your family does not get, infected, just ensuring that everyone is safe. So there's also a lot of emotional labor that, many people are not also really talking about. The emotional labor that, whether women, whether men are also really facing to kind of keep everything together, like keep everything intact. Everyone is hoping for, the pandemic to go away, but it's not like it's going to go away tomorrow. So I think people need to keep it together until then, but it's also quite a challenge for many women in tech. And I think you're also seeing that when it also comes to companies themselves are also downsizing. So you find when you're looking at women in tech, they may be entrepreneurs, they may be already working for organizations. So you find that even when it comes to, say, diversity and inclusion efforts, then of course they become a secondary consideration. So if you're looking at even the impact that they would have made, they're not able to do it as well as they would have. I think what we also find is if you look now at even how the solutions that have come up, you're finding that even within the company, you're looking at that showing of empathy, allowing people to work from home. And I think we find that so many people didn't think that working remotely would be possible. But here we are having a conference that would have been held, in somewhere else, and we would have all had to congregate. But technology has made this happen. So we're still able to run whatever you run the company, run your life, and still be able to deliver what you promised to your customers and even to the people who believe in your product. So, and even moving forward, I think we've seen calls for even leaders to address this crisis, where if it's access to funding, especially for tech companies or even women-led tech companies that are even indigenous to the continent. And I think we've seen this call being made to governments and other institutions that do this work, because if you look at the companies that have been able to even thrive within the pandemic are also really able to do so because of the support that they also receive. So I think this support is actually really important, especially from the very beginning, because if I can't even get to year 6 or even year 2, then it becomes really hard for me to even think of even a brighter future for the company. So it's actually very unfortunate that even the economic impact, as much as COVID-19 is a health crisis, it has also brought with itself economic challenges. And we've even seen this with some of even the patients whose lives we save every single day. We find that like we was looking at one of our patients, she was scheduled to have fibrous surgery earlier on in the year, but she wasn't able to do so. And since she wasn't able to access blood, she had to have the surgery in October. So you can imagine she had her own shop that she would take care of. She had her own family. She had her kids who are, one is in the university and one is in primary school. But because of the pandemic and everything else, and even the health challenges that she had, then it even made it worse. So she had to go back to the village and really try to fend for her family. And the only thing that has kept her is the support that she got from her family members. So I think there's lots of, a combination of empathy, support, money, networks. I think there's lots of sometimes a bit of too much talk that goes into, we can do this, but I think people just need to just make it happen.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So we have some questions from the audience. I am going to direct this to Nelly. Can you please share your biggest barriers to become a female African leader in tech? As a startup founder, someone would appreciate hearing how you have overcome the barriers and how you continue to overcome those barriers.
I could share some. It might take a very long time because there's so many things to talk about. The hardest thing about being a female founder, particularly being African, is that there are some visible barriers and there are also some invisible barriers that you don't talk about, you feel you know about them. And one of the visible areas is that is common, that there is lack of funding that is directed towards female founders, quite a lot from the African continent. So we deal with a triple challenge. We deal with a double challenge of there's lack of funding for African startups on the continent. There's lack of funding for female startups on the continent. So you understand, for being a female founder in the tech space on the continent, you get twice the challenges that your male counterparts have to have. And the other thing is that the tech space, initially when it was started, it was designed without women in. And I was just finished up to say that the tech space had been designed with men in mind, and particularly had never been inclusive for women. And as when I started within the tech space, particularly in South Africa, it was still early on, when we are still early on for the tech space for both men and women, but it was quite getting more. We're progressing mainly for men, and I was one of the first few women that had a startup, being a solo founder at the time. And it was quite difficult because the interaction between men was quite difficult. Investors had never quite spoken to women founders. A lot of the other founders that I was talking to had never seen a female founder with who's an engineer, comes from a technical background. So a lot of them I was sort of pushed to the side because it was quite lonely. Understood that a lot. I needed to do the groundwork of trying to reach out to investors and starting to build relationships, because part of the building the relationship was to say that I would use that relationship to link to other women who are going to come after me, and how they would want to engage with other male founders, other investors, because I knew that I had to be the guinea pig of tech in South Africa or on the African continent. So, and that was what I understood. But then with the changing years, with the years in the ecosystem opening up for women, we have seen a lot of investors opening up, creating more opportunities for women. We have seen also female investors that are coming up on the African continent, being focused on having to support women, being quite focused on creating funds that speak mainly to women-led businesses. And that is one of the interesting things that we have seen quite a lot. Difficult, and it's quite interesting. Things shift right in front of my eyes, whilst I'm also a founder too, and it's quite interesting.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Nelly, for your submission. I have had funding, I have had inclusivity, and I think somewhere I've detected resilience in the whole journey. So I hope we have been able to answer the audience's question. This I am going to direct to Nekesa and Santana. How can organizations create mentorship programs to ensure that we are bringing in great women or girls into tech? Any experience on this? So they have seen an ICT4D company with an internship relationship with a local university in Ghana be successful. They are wondering if the panel has seen anything else. Nekesa, do you want to submit something on this?
Yes. So I think, first of all, let's unashamedly create programs for women, and let those be wholesome programs. A few years ago, I had the idea to create a program for women for an innovation hub that I used to work at. And so I have a circle of people, some men, some women, that I listen to. And so I went to one of the men and I said, who I hold in very high regard, still do. And I said, this is my plan. I know there's several other programs for women out there, but I want to start one. I feel that my space really needs one. And he just didn't understand it. He didn't understand why there needed to be something special for women when we're running programs already. right? And because I held him in such high regard and listened to him and took his advice really seriously, I shelved the idea. But 2 years later, after that, I was finally, you know what, I really see the need for this thing within the space. And so forget what he said, I feel the need to do it. And so I should do it. And we eventually created this program that's done really well. It now has a second cohort of women entrepreneurs specifically, and it's wholesome. And so it does have the cohort of women. It has a mentorship network that surrounds that. And so each of the women within the program are matched with a mentor and majority of the mentors are women as well. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with having a program by women for women only. Again, let's be unashamed about it. And so each of these women is supported by a mentor who's a female working within the corporate space or within government and so on. And what that program was trying to do, at least by the time that I was with that hub, was create this network of women that support women. And I think to answer the question, yes, for sure, there should be a mentorship network, but try as much as possible for to be building a community as well. And so you have the women innovators at the center of it. You have the women mentors who perhaps were innovators or are innovators as well, but are more seasoned than the women within the cohort. You probably want to layer that also with women that fund women, to be part of that community as well. And you also want to create your pipeline. And so you want women who aren't within the cohort, but also form a community of women that could potentially qualify to be in that cohort as well. And so for me, yes, for sure, mentorship, and be unashamed around making it a community of women, but also make it a wholesome experience for those women. And so they have something to look forward to. They're part of a broader community, even once they're done with a program.
Thank you so much. So what I'm hearing is role models. Personally, I decided to become an engineer because I didn't know any female engineers at the time. And I was thinking the people who would want to become engineers, but they think it's supposed to be men. So let me become one so that young girls can look at me and say, when I grow up, I want to be like her. Thank you so much. So as we wrap up, I'm going to implore, this is actually a question from the audience. And I am going to request, we're starting with Santana. I am going to request each of us to share. We've emphasized how it's very important to engage African women in the digital health space. Can each one of us mention at least one regional or global community of practice or digital health association that is doing a good job of giving a platform to African women's voices, and also mention that one thing that they're doing that is a success in this area? Starting with you, Santana.
Yeah, and I think before I even address this, I'd like to even go back to the question that Nikesa was addressing, because I think it's now we talked about engaging the young women when they're in, say in the university programs, but I think it's better to even start early. So I think that there also needs to be more work when it even comes to even the role modeling, ensuring that it's very easy for even young girls to find people who look like them doing what they want to do. So the earlier the better, because I think what we're also dealing with, cultural beliefs where women should not. If you're too good at math, it's not that nice, So it's where some of these cultural beliefs are held very strongly. So the sooner the intervention, the better. And even as it goes with that, then the quality of these mentorship programs also really has to be focused on. Because sometimes you find people coming together, putting in money, but you know how you go into a space and it's very easy for you to see that you are an afterthought. People didn't put so much work into the quality of the mentorship that you're getting, the quality of the mentors that you're getting. Are the mentors even tailored to your specific field or the area of expertise that you'd want to get into? So I think it really need to stop, ensuring we need to stop treating this, mentorship programs as just a by the way. I think the same focus that is put because if you look at the importance of that mentorship, it really is a game changer, especially when you're able to come into the picture very early and ensure that you do a good job all the way, because it then makes it easy for even that circles of women doing that to really even grow with each other. So you can imagine for young girls who probably were in a STEM program in primary school, they're able to even grow within each other. And even when they're in high school and university, they've been able to even diversify the fields of science that they've probably gotten into. And this one makes it more beautiful, because they will grow with each other when they get into even career-wise, and they'll be able to support each other and even mention each other's names during forums. You mention each other's names, even when somebody's asking, who knows who does this? You're like, oh, yeah, I know somebody. So I think, it really needs to start early. The late intervention is not going to help much, because we deal with so many other myriads of issues in addition to the lack of access to opportunities from the very beginning.
Thank you. Okay. So do you know a global community of practice that is giving a platform dedicated to African women's voices?
Yeah. So I think what I've seen, there are quite many of them, but I think we've seen, say, innovations in healthcare by Duke University. So you find that there's so many, part of that network is also comprised of, startups or digital health startups that are doing work in the continent. And if you look at the hubs that are also looking at digital health, I think they're continent focused and as well globally focused. So I think there are quite a number of them. But I think some of those have been super helpful in ensuring that even when it comes to even, say, connections between, say, the African diaspora and digital health innovators in the continent, we've seen some of these communities really come up. I think the technology is making it easier for people to connect. You find now people are using Clubhouse, right? People are having chats and just meeting somebody who's probably doing something, is based in Atlanta. So I think technology is really bridging that gap that existed and would not have been filled if technology wasn't there in the first place.
Thank you so much. Nelly, do you know of a global community of practice that is giving African women a voice in digital health?
I could not speak about digital health quite a lot, but I could communities that give women a voice within the tech space and within engineering. And one that I'm very close to is Womensch, started by two female in South Africa engineers, and they have quite created an impact on the African continent, supporting a lot of females studying engineering or other technical fields. And one of the interesting things that they have done is that, the African prize for engineering for the past 5 years had never been won by a woman. And this year it had been won by one of the women that they have been the alumni and been training into the business and also in product creation. So it's one of the community I quite like the most. And the other one is She Leads Africa. It's also a community I love the most, because a lot of times when you talk about these communities of digital health, we talk about those that are too much deep into the tech space, teaching women about product development, about engineering. But I also love it because it's also one that teaches women to be confident, particularly young girls to be confident. One thing that I always realized is between women not being tech founders or not starting businesses and getting on with their businesses. It's not because they lack the skills or the competency to start businesses. It's not because they lack the drive. It's because they sort of lack the confidence. They sort of lack the support for someone to tell them that, hey, you can do it. If you want to talk about personal issues, you can belong to this community. So that is what I quite like the most. So I'd always advise people to follow She Leads Africa because of the content that they share, the community of women from diverse community, from the fashion world, from health, from the deep technical background. It's like a blend of women from different ages that share a lot of experiences that they have.
Thank you so much. And lastly, Nekesa, do you know of a platform?
So the short answer to that long question is no, I don't know. I don't think that any global initiative that focuses specifically on digital health for African women comes to mind. But what I do know is that there's several homegrown solutions. Run by African women in Africa for African women. Yes, they are agnostic, but for sure within them, there are women within the digital health space. And one that I love is Akira Chicks, which is based in Nairobi, Kenya. And speaking to the point that you really want to get them when they're young, Akira Chicks works with young girls, perhaps just out of secondary school, and introduces them to the tech and innovation space, gives them basic tech skills, and then supports them in building out their products. And majority of these girls are from disadvantaged backgrounds. And so that's already opening out a whole other demographic or sector of women and introducing them to the tech space and enabling them to create solutions that matter and that are useful for them. And so there's Akira Chicks. There's also African Women in Tech, which I've spoken about on several panels. They as well are an African-focused initiative run by African women, also sector agnostic, but are doing a great job of building a community of women across the continent that are all focused on tech and innovation, and some of them within the digital space. And obviously, I have to mention AfriLabs because majority of our spaces, I think it's 70%, but I need to go back to our report and confirm that are actually focused on supporting women and youth to build out their innovations.
Whoa, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Nekesa. Thank you so much, Nelly. Thank you so much, Santana. So maybe my input on this would be putting it out. There is something called the Microsoft Patent Program. It is not mainly focused on African women, but it is focused on innovations by women. It actually helped us patent the innovation that I am working on, which is a smartphone-based sickle cell diagnostic tool. So if there are any innovators out there, you're working on something that you think is new, it's very unique, you will want to check them out. And then there is another space, it's called the Global Health Core Fellowship. This looks at people who are looking at doing work in global health. I did 1 year of the fellowship, and trust me, it turned my entire life around. I want to thank all of us for being a part of this. I would like to thank all the attendees. I would want to give a special recognition to we want to give a very, very special recognition to the organizers of this and for giving us a chance to run this panel. We hope it has inspired all of you, and we look forward to meeting you some point. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Bonita.
And thank you, everyone.
Thank you. So just in case you missed the introduction, on our panel, we had 3 powerhouses. We had Santana Mthoni, the country lead of Life Bank Kenya. We had Nelly Kolise, the founder of the iMed Tech Group, and Nekesa Were, who's the director of strategy at AfriLabs. What this conversation was about is we were shedding spotlight, and most of the things we discussed in here was the importance of locally driven and female-led tech solutions. We saw how digital health was creating and enabling and inviting space for women to participate in technology. And then these amazing women also kind of shared how they were still killing it in tech, despite the increased gender challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. We hope you got insights. We hope you got some role models. And once again, we want to thank you so much for being a part of this panel.